The Vote election predictions. Today we're going to be looking at the 2026 U.S. Senate races, and we're going to be seeing, do the Democrats have a chance at retaking the U.S. Senate in 2026? Now, as you all probably know, in 2024, the Democrats, they lost their Senate majority in addition to the White House, and they had held it for 4 years after initially flipping the Senate in 2020, and then they had gained a seat in 2022, but the Republicans had gained a few seats and flipped back the chamber this past November. So I've already taken the liberty of filling out the seats that I think are going to be safe for either party in 2026. And by safe, what I mean is I think either party is going to be able, or not either party, but the party that I have filled in, they're going to be able to win this seat comfortably, at least by 10 points. And then the seats that I don't have filled out yet, those are the ones that we're going to be talking about that have the potential to be competitive. Now, going into this midterm election cycle, the Republicans are defending 53 seats and the Democrats are defending 47. Now, a few things to note. The Senate elections in Ohio and Florida are, of course, special elections because those seats have been rendered open due to J.D. Vance becoming vice president and Marco Rubio becoming the Secretary of State, and so they've obviously had to resign their seats. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get started with Alaska. So in Alaska, in 2026, we have Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. He's running for re-election, and right now we don't have a clear Democratic candidate. Now, in 2024, Trump did win Alaska by 13 points, and that's an improvement from a 10-point win in 2020. And we do know, of course, that Democrat Mary Peltola lost her House seat in 2024, albeit narrowly. However, there's speculation that she might run for the U.S. Senate, or she could run for governor. We don't quite know yet. However, she is the Democrats' best hope at flipping the seat, and if she were to run, I could see the Democrats losing the seat by a likely margin. So for now, we're just going to put it at likely red. And to clarify on the margins, this solid color that you see right here, that's safe. That's going to be 10 plus points. For likely, which is this color, it'll be 5 to 10 points. And then for lean, which would be this color, I would say that's 1 to 5 points. And then tilt is this color, that's going to be less than a point. So let me clear that up real quick. Oops. Okay, so now moving on to Nebraska, we know this is a seat that in 2024 we had Democrat Dan Osborne run against Republican Deb Fischer, and it was a lot closer than most people expected. And sorry, I misspoke there. Dan Osborne ran as an independent, not a Democrat, which was a huge part of his appeal. Osborne only lost Nebraska by 7 points. That's a huge overperformance. And Democrats are hoping he's going to run again in 2026 against Senator Pete Ricketts. And I believe he's shown interest, if I'm not mistaken. And if he runs again, obviously with Trump again in the White House, this midterm is expected to be a bluer environment, and it's entirely possible that this could be a much closer race than even 2024 if Dan Osborne can put up a strong campaign. I could see Pete Ricketts only winning this seat by 3 to 4 points. But again, we don't know if he's going to run, and we don't know if his campaign is going to be as strong this time around, which is why for now I'm going to put this at likely red. Now in Texas, Texas is pretty interesting because in 2020, Biden only lost Texas by 5.5 points. But then in 2024, there was sort of a huge reversion in Texas. Trump won the state by about 14 points, which was a huge swing to the right. However, we saw Democrat Colin Allred only lost by 9 points against Ted Cruz. That was a huge 5-point overperformance. Well, what does that tell us? That tells us down ballot Texas Republicans, there are certainly weak candidates out there. Now, the Republican John Cornyn is running for re-election in 2026. However, it's looking very likely he's going to be challenged by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in the Republican primary. And so far, polling has indicated that Ken Paxton is a clear favorite in this primary. Now, we know that Ken Paxton is very controversial. He is not super popular even among Republicans, especially in the legislature. He underperforms Governor Greg Abbott, and there's no evidence to suggest that he'd be a strong candidate, much rather the opposite. So, and obviously Texas has shown the candidate quality does matter with Colin Allred's huge overperformance against Ted Cruz. Now, what does this tell us? Well, this tells us if the Democrats run Colin Allred again in a much bluer environment this time around, things could get a lot more narrower than they were in 2024. And what do I mean by that? Well, remember, Ted Cruz only won by 9 points. If Ken Paxton is the Republican nominee in what could be potentially a blue wave year, instead of winning by 9 points, it's entirely plausible he wins by 2 to 3 points. However, Texas has surprised us in 2024 with a huge swing to the right. So it is entirely possible that Paxton wins comfortably. He could potentially win by 9 to 10 points. And at this stage, with the election being almost a year and a half away, it's hard to tell. So I would say for now, I'm going to put Texas at likely R. And as things develop, that could change. Now, going over here to Florida, Florida also showed a huge swing to the Republicans in 2024. Trump won the state by about 13 points after only winning by, I believe, 3.5 points in 2020. And so Florida has truly become a solid red state, and we saw further evidence of that in 2022 with Ron DeSantis winning re-election by about 20 points. Now, with that being said, 2026, once again, we can probably expect it's going to be a bluer environment with Trump as the incumbent during a midterm year. So what would that entail for Florida? Well, while I imagine Senator Ashley Moody, who was appointed by Ron DeSantis, she is running for re-election, I fully expect her to win comfortably. However, again, we have that 10-point threshold for a safe rating. I don't think she's going to clear 10 points. I'd imagine she probably wins by 8 or 9 points. Again, Florida's a red state. It's getting a lot redder, but considering the environment, I don't think it's quite going to be enough for the safe rating. So I'm going to put it as likely R. However, I could definitely see the argument for it being safe. And as you can see, this has the Republicans at 49 seats already. So it's going to take a lot for the Democrats to catch up. And so we're going to move on now to Minnesota. Now, the current incumbent Democrat, Tina Smith, she is retiring, and we actually have an interesting Democratic primary here between Congresswoman Angie Craig and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Craig is, I guess, considered to be a more moderate candidate. Flanagan's considered to be more progressive. Now, Kamala Harris only won Minnesota by, I believe, around 3 points. But they're, even with, vice presidential candidate and current governor Tim Walz as her running mate. So that wasn't a super great showing for the Democrats in Minnesota. However, uh, Minnesota has not elected a Republican senator since I believe 2006, and I don't imagine that streak is going to break anytime soon. I think whoever the Democrats nominate in Minnesota, they'll have a fairly easy time winning this race. And looking towards the Republican side, their only real candidate so far is former Rockets player Royce White, who's very controversial. I think he's going to be a weak candidate. I think the Democrats are going to do quite well in this race. So, with all of that being said, I think this is going to be a likely blue seat for now, unless the Republicans can get a strong candidate out there. I just don't think their candidate bench right now is very good. And that gets the Democrats to 43 seats. Now, going on over to Michigan, what we have is Democratic Senator Gary Peters is retiring. And interestingly enough, in 2024, Trump carried Michigan by about 1.5 points, but Democrat Alyssa Slotkin won this open seat by about really less than half a percentage point. So around 2% of Michigan voters voted for Trump and for a Democrat for the U.S. Senate. And I think down ballot Michigan in general is a bit of a bluer state than some of the other Rust Belt states, such as Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I think it's arguably slightly bluer. And with the Republicans, they could nominate Congressman John James. He's been sort of a perennial candidate at this point. And with the Democrats, you've got a few options. You've got Congresswoman Haley Stevens. She's more of a centrist type. You've got State Senator Mallory McMorrow. You've got Abdul El Sayed. You've got a few different options. I think Stevens might alienate the Arab vote there, which is huge in Michigan, but I think McMorrow and El Sayed could get those voters back, and they will, in getting those Arab voters back, will be critical for Democrats to win Michigan, because of course they were a significant part of the reason why Kamala Harris lost Michigan in 2024. I think Democrats are beginning to learn those lessons now, and I'm not a huge fan of the Republican bench here either. I think for now, Michigan, we can put it as lean blue, especially considering the national environment. That gets Democrats to 44, and now hopping on over to New Hampshire over here, we've got Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen. She is retiring. Democratic Congressman Chris Pappas is running for this seat. Now, going back to 2022, Senator Maggie Hassan, the Democrat, she was expected to have a very close race on her hands, but she defeated Dawn Balduke, the Republican, by about 9 points. Kamala Harris won New Hampshire by 3 points, and that was kind of like a worst case scenario for the Democrats. I think New Hampshire at its core is a reliably lean blue state, and I think in 2026 it's gonna sort of remain that way because former Governor Chris Sununu isn't running. Governor Kelly Ayotte, another Republican, neither one of them is running. They would have been the best possible candidates for this seat. Now, the most likely Republican candidate is former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown, who ran for the New Hampshire seat back in 2014. I don't think he's a very formidable opponent for Chris Pappas. I have this seat as likely blue. Now, hopping on down to Virginia, we have Senator Mark Warner. We don't know if he's going to run, but historically he's been quite a strong candidate. For example, in 2020, Biden won Virginia by 10 points. Warner outperformed him, winning by 12. and then he won by about over 30 points back in 2008. But Mark Warner has traditionally been quite a strong candidate. The Republican Party has a few options they could run, among their congressmen. We don't know if Governor Glenn Youngkin might be interested in this seat because obviously, in the governor election, he is term limited. And we know that their lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears, is running for governor, so she's not going to be running for this seat. Neither is their Republican Attorney General, Jason Miyares. He's running for re-election as Attorney General, I believe. So the Republicans don't have many credible candidates at this point. And even if Warner retires, the Democrats do have a deep bench in Virginia. I would say for now, Virginia is likely blue, and Kamala Harris did win Virginia by about 6 points. Right now, I'd say Democrats win this seat by at least 8 points, if not more. Now, going on down to North Carolina, this is going to be a huge race, and for Democrats to flip the Senate or even get close, they must win North Carolina. Now, in North Carolina, we've got Republican Senator Thom Tillis running for re-election, and it's looking quite likely that former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper is going to run for this seat. And that's very good news for Democrats. Why? Because in 2016 and in 2020, Trump was on the ballot. He won North Carolina both of those years, while at the same time, Democrat Roy Cooper won the governor's race. Roy Cooper is the strongest possible candidate that the Democrats could run here. And looking back at 2024, Democrats won, I believe, every statewide race in North Carolina, with the exception of the presidency. Democrat Josh Stein beat Mark Robinson in the governor's race by 15 points. Trump beat Harris by about 3 points in the presidential race here in the Tar Heel state. And with Roy Cooper on the ballot against Thom Tillis, who is fending off attacks in his own party from the right, this might just be the year that Democrats flip a U.S. Senate seat in North Carolina. They've never had really a blue year for Senate races in North Carolina since 2008. That was the last instance when Kay Hagan won that seat. And I think this is the year that Democrats finally break through. So I'm going to put North Carolina as tilt D for now. And now moving on down to Georgia, we've got Democrat Jon Ossoff. He won back in the 2021 runoffs with Democrat Raphael Warnock, if you'll remember, when he defeated Republican David Perdue. And going into that race, it really seemed as if David Perdue was this super strong candidate. He was going to be very hard to beat. But Jon Ossoff ended up beating him, and he showed us in that race that he's a very skilled debater as well. And the Republicans, they don't have that many candidates in the field right now. They've got Congressman Buddy Carter running, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has declined to run. Governor Brian Kemp, he'd be a strong candidate. He's declined to run. We don't know if Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is running. So with all that being said, the Republicans don't really have a strong candidate. And I think Jon Ossoff, he's going to have that incumbency bonus plus the environment. I think he wins by 3 to 4 points. And Trump only won Georgia by 2 points. So although the state did swing to the right from 2020 to 2024, relative to the nation, it actually shifted to the left. I'm going to put Georgia as lean blue for now. Now, looking over at Iowa, you've got Senator Joni Ernst in a state that Trump won by 12 or 13 points. In 2020, Ernst won by about 6 points. She underran Trump by 2 points. And in 2026, you've got Democrat J.D. Scholten running, and you've got Nathan Sage as well. Regardless of who's the nominee, I don't think this is really a winnable race for the Democrats. Iowa has just gotten to be a much redder state in the past decade or so. However, I do think this could be a closer race, even though it may not be winnable, and especially in with Joni Ernst's recent comments about Medicaid, saying, oh, well, we're all going to die in response to constituents' concerns about Medicaid cuts under the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I think stuff like that just doesn't play well in ads. I would imagine she wins this race by 5 or 6 points. I'm going to say this is going to be likely R. And if you'll notice, that does get the Republicans to 50 seats. And remember, J.D. Vance does break the tie. He's a Republican. So the Republicans only need 50 seats for a majority. The Democrats need 51. So this is enough to give the Republicans a majority. But how close can the Democrats get in 2026 so that they can build on that in 2028? Well, let's move on to Ohio. Where this seat became empty with J.D. Vance resigning so that he could become vice president. You've got former Lieutenant Governor John Husted in this seat. And now, so we know that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, he's been trying to recruit former Senator Sherrod Brown, who would be a strong candidate to run for this seat. But I don't think Sherrod Brown wants to, because he just ran a campaign in 2024. He'd have to run in 2026 for the seat, and it'd be up again for re-election in 2028. I don't imagine he wants to deal with all of that. Those are going to be some very tough campaigns for him. It looks like he's going to run for governor of Ohio in 2026 against Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't think the Democratic bench here is super strong. And with that being said, without Sherrod Brown, you have pretty much no real shot at winning this seat. I don't think. I'm going to put this at likely R for now. I think whichever Republican runs, they win by high single digits. I believe Trump won here by around 12 points. Now, going finally to Maine, you've got Republican Senator Susan Collins here. And she has been in office for quite a while, I believe since 1996. Now, she's branded herself as a moderate Republican, even though she often does vote with Trump. And Democrats have tried time and time again to take her down. They have failed. Now, in 2020, with ranked choice voting, in the first round, she did win by 9 points with 51% of the vote. So ranked choice voting didn't kick in. But if you add up sort of all the left-wing votes together, she would have only won by about 5 points or so. Now in 2024, Kamala Harris won this state, by about 7 points. And so far, it seems like all the strong Democratic candidates are running for governor in 2026 because, they don't want to be the sacrificial lamb to run against Susan Collins. And so we haven't really seen any good candidates enter the race to run for Senate here. And that is playing against the Democrats' shots at winning the seat. So if they can get a strong candidate, I think they've got a real shot at winning here. But so far, no one has really taken up that mantle. And so for now, I'm going to put this seat as lean R until I see any reason to change that. But this seat could definitely change ratings depending, on candidate quality and such. So looking here, we know that the Democrats need 51 seats to retake the Senate. Here, they're at 48. If they win Maine, that gets them to 49. But getting seat number 50 and 51, there's very few places where you can pick those seats up. Ohio would be a huge push. Iowa, huge push. Texas, that would be a huge push. Honestly, I don't see the path
to Democrats retaking the Senate in 2026. However, if they, for example, manage to flip Maine in 2026 along with North Carolina, that does get them to 49. If they win the presidency in 2028, they only need to flip one more seat for a majority. And if they lose the presidency, they only need to flip two more seats for a majority. So there's certainly a path to a majority in 2028 if Democrats make gains in 2026. But as for getting a majority next year, I don't really see a feasible way for Democrats to do so. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, share the video. I'm trying to get this channel up on its feet and growing. And make sure to turn on notifications, and I'll see you all in the next video.